Hi, and welcome to MicroStrategy. My name is Michael Hoffmann, and I'm working as a Principal Sales Engineer for MicroStrategy Germany. In this video, I want to show you how you can integrate MicroStrategy collaboration services into Microsoft Teams. The question is, what is our goal? What do we want to achieve? MicroStrategy collaboration services is really a powerful environment. In this environment that is directly connected to MicroStrategy library and dossiers, you have the capability to comment on your figures you see, on your visualizations. Your comments are directly connected with the pages of the dossiers that you see, and you can start collaboration processes on top of your data with the collaboration services. On the other hand, we have MS Teams, and a team can have many different channels, and it would be great if we would be able to synchronize, for example, comments on top of data that you're analyzing with MicroStrategy using dossiers and library directly into a Teams channel. Moreover, we want to achieve that a user in MS Teams does not only get the info about the comment and the corresponding, let's say, dossier and page and a project. On the other hand, we want to achieve that an MS Teams user is able to navigate from Teams directly into the MicroStrategy portal, directly into library, in dossiers, to the corresponding page in order to keep track of the information, of the comments, in order to answer comments, and so on and so on. So this is the beauty of this approach. The question is, how can we achieve this? Because this is not a standard functionality of MicroStrategy, but with some tricks, you're able to achieve this very easily. And the beauty of this approach is that it's very flexible. Okay, so you're able to tweak this solution exactly to your demands. Okay, so first we need to talk about MS Teams. In MS Teams, you have the capability to define channels. Every single team has a default channel called General. But moreover, you have the capability to integrate many more channels if you like. In addition to this, you can define a so-called webhook. This is important, a webhook for a dedicated channel. And this is a kind of postbox, an inbox, that you can use from a programming interface. And to webhooks, an inbound webhook, you're able to send data that is from type JSON directly into a channel. And then this pops up as an item in the corresponding channel. So webhooks and the corresponding programming interface, this is the basis to connect MicroStrategy collaboration services or any other, let's say, environment to MS Teams and the correlated channels. Okay, the next thing we need to understand is where does the data come from MicroStrategy? So MicroStrategy has this collaboration services, and the data from collaboration services, let's say the objects that you're commenting, the comment itself, and so on and so on, the users, and so on and so on, it's persistent in a database. And MicroStrategy is using its repository. It's a PostgreSQL database. It's standardized, and this database is called MSTR Collab. And it's important to understand the schema, let's say the main objects in the schema related to collaboration services. But it's very easy. I will show you this in a minute. Okay. The next thing we need is we need to get access to the MicroStrategy semantic graph, to the environment of MicroStrategy, because we need to look up some objects in the semantic graph that we need to push the data into the MS Teams channel. And therefore, we use the very flexible and powerful REST API of MicroStrategy. And as you might know, MicroStrategy has a Python package, a Python integration on top of the REST API called MicroStrategy IO. And we are leveraging this programming interface to collect some information from the semantic graph that we need before we push the data via webhooks into an MS Teams channel. There is one Python package that makes it very easy to create messages that we can send to a webhook into a Teams channel. And this Python package is called Python MS Teams. And I would encourage to use this package to make it even more easier, to use Python on top of this architecture and to push messages very easily into a Teams channel. If you do not want to use this package, no problem. You can code directly against a webhook. And there are several examples in the internet that showcase how to use it. But if you use the Python package called Python MS Teams, it's even easier, to leverage this functionality. And then we have all we need, and then we put it all together. And during the next minutes, I will show you live how you set up MS Teams with webhooks. We take a look at the collaboration database to understand the important part of the schema. And then I will show you the code, what you need in order to synchronize the objects from collaboration services with MS Teams. We start with MS Teams. As you can see here, I have created an empty team called Customer Team Demo. And if you create a new team in MS Teams, it gets a default channel called General. But moreover, you have the opportunity to define as many channels as you like. Okay, so for example, if you go here and then on settings, you see here the channels. And from here, you can add channels as you like. What's important is that every single channel in Teams can have this dedicated inbox, okay, that is available by using a webhook. And a webhook is a kind of HTTPS endpoint, a programming interface you can use to push messages into the corresponding channel in Teams. And then these messages pop up in the corresponding channel. And you have a lot of options to structure your message, but you will see a little bit later more about these capabilities. Okay, so in my example here, I'm using the default channel. I'm using the general channel, and I would like to set up now a webhook for the general channel, so that MicroStrategy collaboration services are able to push notifications, to push comments directly into this channel. And therefore, we click here on the menu and click on Connectors. And then the Connectors page comes up. And from here, you have the opportunity to define, let's say, additional connectors to your channel. And what we are looking for is the incoming webhook connector. And I will add this to my channel here. We click here on Add, and then this connector is added to my channel. Okay. In the next step, we need to configure this connector. So I'll go back to Connectors. And you can see here now the connector is here at the top of my list, and I click Configure. Okay. The first thing, and the first step, we need to give it a name. And this is the name that comes up, is then showing a new message that comes via this webhook. In my example, I give it the name MicroStrategy Collaboration Services. Okay, you can combine your own image with this webhook. In my example, I'm using the MicroStrategy image, and then I create this connector and the configuration for this general channel. Okay, so in order to write code against this webhook, you need the endpoint, the HTTPS endpoint for your coding. And the endpoint is here. So this is the link to this webhook that is related to this general channel in your Teams. And I will copy this to clipboard. And now I click on Done. And now everything is in place and the webhook is active, and we can use it in order to push messages, let's say from MicroStrategy or from elsewhere, into this webhook, into this channel. And now we want to take a look at the collaboration database of MicroStrategy. As you might know, MicroStrategy is using 3 different databases in order to run the environment. The first one is the database for the metadata. The second one is the database for platform analytics for the real-time monitoring solution. And the third one is the database for collaboration services. All these 3 databases are PostgreSQL databases. And I'm here connecting against the collaboration database, and you can see the schema is easy. So we have only a few tables here, and for our use case, we need only 2 of them. Yeah, we need the topics table and we need the comments table. Okay, sounds easy, but if we take a closer look at the columns and the values, is a little bit more complicated, but I will show you. Okay, so first, let's take a look at the topics. So a topic is, for example, a dossier. Yeah, so a dossier with the ID and the name. Yeah, so in collaboration services, you are able, for example, to comment on a dossier, on a dedicated page in a dossier, and so on and so on. And therefore, these objects need to be part of the collaboration database. And this is what you see here. So here we have all the topics that are related to the dossiers and the data you would like to comment. The other table that is relevant is the comments table. Let's take a look at this. I have only 1 row in this table for my demo here. And you can see here the message, for example, user ID and the relationship to the topic. So in other words, we need to join these 2 tables for our scenario. Okay. Unfortunately, it's a little bit more complex because if you comment in MicroStrategy, your comments are related to a specific page that is part of a dossier. And a dossier can be structured by chapters and pages. And you have many options, yeah, to visualize data in MicroStrategy. So sometimes you have many different pages in a dossier. And on each page, you can start a commenting process. And therefore, you need the info about the page as well, if you would like to relate the comments to the right page within the right dossier. Yeah, and this info, this data is saved in a field called embedded. As you can see here, this is not an easy column. It's not just a value. It's a dictionary. Okay, so this is a JSON data structure, and unfortunately, you can't read it so easily with SQL, but no problem. We have Python, and in Python, it's so easy to get this data, transform this data into a dictionary, and then access the elements of this dictionary very easily. Yeah, and I will show you a little bit later how this works. And now we want to jump into MicroStrategy. We want to create a comment that is related to a page in a dossier. And therefore here I'm in a dossier. This dossier has several pages. So in my example, I navigate to another one. I want to take a look at performance versus targets. Yeah. And now I click here on collaboration. And now the collaboration panel from MicroStrategy comes up and gives me the options to write directly a comment referencing other people or groups and so on, or on the other hand, start a discussion. In my example, I would like to put a comment here, and I want to put a comment here that is related to a colleague, and I say, "Hi, Michael. Performance versus targets is not good," and so on and so on. If you like, you can include chapter filter here as well, but you don't need to. And now I click on post, and now this comment is saved in the collaboration database. Additionally, MicroStrategy is out sending the info to Michael using different channels. So for example, using email or the browser portal, and so on and so on. Okay, the next step, we would like to take a look at the collaboration database, take a look about this item, this row that was now created in the collaboration database. Here we are in the collaboration database. We are focusing on the comments table. You see it's empty, but you saw before we created a new comment. So now I will refresh this table, and Now I refresh the table here, and you can see the data is really in this table. We see the message here, user ID, topic ID. Topic ID, as I mentioned before, is the reference to the dossier. This is a unique ID, this is a GUID of the dossier. Then we have a date created in milliseconds. We need to transform this date so that we can have a better understanding of the date. You will see this later. And as I mentioned before, we have this embedded column. And in embedded, there is not, let's say, a string value or a number value or so. It's a JSON structure, and we can analyze this structure with a dictionary. And this object is used in Python. We will use this in Python in order to get access to the data in this JSON format. And this element here by key, this is relevant for our advanced scenario in MS Teams, because we want to push not only the message in MS Teams, furthermore, we would like to inject an active button there that is related to the message that we can use in order to jump directly from MS Teams into MicroStrategy library in the dossier, directly into the page, in order to start working on top of this comment in the dedicated page. Before I show you the code that puts everything together, the intelligence behind the approach, we will take a look at the final result. So here I'm back in my general channel that belongs to my teams called Customer Team Demo. And you can see here in the general channel, the first message here, this was from the webhook configuration that we did before. Okay, so the webhook told us, okay, it's installed now, and there is a name for the webhook called MicroStrategy Collaboration Services. And here you can see the first message, yeah, that I sent from Collaboration Services from MicroStrategy using the webhook to this channel that belongs to the Customer Team Demo team. Okay, and here you can see I'm collecting additional data that is not part of the data that comes from the collaboration database. For example, the name of the project or the name of the dossier. You will get only IDs from the collaboration database. So in other words, we need to look up the names, but you can do this easily using the REST API of MicroStrategy. And on top of this, the so-called Python MicroStrategy IO package. And with that, you can extract easily the data you would like to see. In this situation, it's the names of the project and the dossier. Yeah, and here you can see I put it all together in a so-called Teams card. A card is a kind of structure, a kind of representation of data, and you're able to format the data using specific, let's say, card templates or card designs. You have options, yeah, to structure this data. So for example, here you can see it's a kind of table structure where you have a label and a value. And I'm using this in order to structure this info here. Or for example, here you can see a kind of header, and here after this line, this is an additional section, yeah, that is integrated in this card. And I put it all together with my code that I will show you in a minute. Okay, I think one of the most important features is that this is now really an object, yeah, in Teams. That is important. It's not embedding. It's not a kind of container or so that is running here in parallel. This is really now an object in MS Teams. In other words, we can reply, yeah, to this object. Yeah, I think this is good. Yeah, and you see here now it's really an object. I can work with it, I can reference this object, and so on and so on. I can comment on it. I can say, okay, this is really cool. Yeah, it's not cool because it's bad news, but it's really an object now in Teams, and this is really the beauty of this approach. Okay, the last thing, and this is a really power feature, is I think in most cases, if someone gets access to this message and reads this message, then he or she wants to dive directly into the collaboration process, into the dossier, want to take a look at the figures, want to take a look at the visuals, and so on and so on. And here you can see I placed a link, and this link is referencing here the server of MicroStrategy, the project, the dossier, and the page, yeah, where we injected the comment, yeah, and this is all gathered from the collaboration database. So if I click on this link, yeah, then the browser comes up and navigates me directly into MicroStrategy library, into the report, into the dossier in this case. And here you can see the dossier. And if I click here on the collaboration, you can see here is the entry that you saw before. Yeah, for sure, you can integrate a single sign-on so that you do not have the need to sign into MicroStrategy. But this is just a part of the authentication mechanisms in the background. Okay. And now we come to the last part of my presentation. I think this is the most interesting and most important one, because here we talk about the code, the Python code that puts everything together. Okay, before we step into the code, we need to show some variables here. You see, we have here the configuration of the MicroStrategy environment I'm talking to. So for example, here the library endpoint. This is important because we need to use REST API to look up some names for IDs, so for example, the name of the project or the name of the user. In collaboration services, in the tables, you have only IDs, GUIDs. And if you would like to get the name of the objects that are behind the GUIDs, we can do this by using the REST API. And therefore, I need here this endpoint to the REST API and to the MicroStrategy server, and username and password, and so on and so on. With this info, we will connect to MicroStrategy. Moreover, we have here the configuration URL of the webhook. So we are referencing this HTTPS endpoint via our code, yeah, to open this webhook and to push messages into the corresponding channel. Yeah, and then we have the configuration of our PostgreSQL MicroStrategy collaboration database, and here's the connection string that I'm using here with the SQL Alchemy package. And here you can see this is the library URL that I'm using as one element that I need to enrich with further elements in order to create the final URL to the dossier with the comments and so on and so on. This is used to create this link button in the MS Teams channel. Okay, and now jump into the code. Okay, so we start easily. So here at the beginning, you see we are importing our definitions. Then we get access to some packages we need. I'm using SQL Alchemy here as my SQL package in order to connect to PostgreSQL database. Then I'm using pandas because I would like to access data frames. I would like to do data manipulations using data frames. Here is the package that makes it easy to get access to the webhook and to push messages into the webhook. And then I get access here to the MicroStrategy IO package because I need to set up the connection to MicroStrategy. I have to look up a user. I have to look up the project name. Okay, good. Then now let's start. You see here, I'm creating now a connection to my collaboration database. And here in this SQL, yeah, I'm joining the two tables from collaboration database. I'm joining the topics and the comments table. I'm extracting some columns here. Yeah. Okay. Then I run this SQL and I get the data into a data frame. Okay. There is one column, and in this column I have two values, and they are concatenated by using this character here. And now I'm splitting it up. I'm splitting it up because I want a single columns in my data frames for both values, and therefore I'm splitting it here, and then I get two additional columns, the project ID column and the object ID column. And then I can drop this combination column here because I don't need it anymore. Okay, here in the last step, I need to transform the date that comes from the comments, because date is in milliseconds, so it's a number value, and we need to transform this into a value that makes more sense. So really a date value with time. Okay. Okay, now I have all the data, and then the next step, I'm iterating through all the rows that come from the comments table, because in my data frame, yeah, I have the same number of rows, yeah, that came from the collaboration table, and therefore I'm iterating through all the rows. In most cases, I think it will have only one row because we are referencing the most actual value there, yeah. And if I then get the row, I extract user ID and project ID from the rows, and then I ask MicroStrategy using the REST API about the real username and the project name. Yeah, and then I'm transforming the embedded column. As you remember, this is a string, but in the string value, it's a JSON string, and this JSON string needs to be transformed into a dictionary. And if you have this dictionary, then you can query the dictionary about a specific part of this JSON structure. And in our scenario here, I need this page key combination because this is the page that we are referencing for our scenario when we jump from MS Teams directly into the dossier, into a specific page where the comment was created. Okay, and then we are creating the message for MS Teams. So the first thing is we create a connection using the webhook URL, and then we set up the title and the text, and then we define a section. As I mentioned, MS Teams is thinking of, let's say, virtual cards that you're able to structure. And in my example here, I'm creating such a section in a card, and I give it a title and add facts, yeah, to this card, to this section. And each fact has a name and a value. Yeah, it looks like a table, and it makes it very easy to structure the data and to make the data good looking. Okay. And then I add the section to the message, yeah, and then I'm creating the URL to the MicroStrategy dossier in library that is linked to the comment, but not only the URL to the dossier. I need the URL plus the information about the page, yeah, where the comment was created. And therefore, here we can see this is a combination of project and object and dossier page key. And the dossier page key, as you remember, was extracted by the dictionary object that came from the JSON data that was part of this embedded column in the SQL database. And then we create a so-called link button, yeah, in the message. And then I send the message. And that's all. And if I have more than one new message, I iterate through all the messages, and then I have dedicated messages in MS Teams. So very easy. And with that, we are at the end of my video. I hope you enjoyed this little journey together with me. I think you saw that we have many options here to set up really specific solutions, specific scenarios for our solutions here. And if you would like to enrich the scenarios, so for example, keep track of all the messages that have been synchronized so far, what is still open, and so on, it can be added to the scenario. I think this is not complicated. I would like to mention one last thing here before I close this video. MicroStrategy has additional options, to work here with MS Teams and to push data into Teams channels, or for example, to embed visualizations and dossiers or even applications into Teams. And I will cover this in additional videos. In this video, I just wanted to focus on the coding capabilities here that we can use by leveraging Python and the specific APIs and interfaces from MicroStrategy databases and MS Teams. Okay, and with that, I wish you all the best. Bye.